Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Property Hustler Show, where we interview high-level real estate investing players right here in Southern Ontario. My name is Andrew, and today Ping and I are joined by Arro Hossain, who is a serial real estate investor who is also a realtor and is currently specializing in multi-residential commercial conversions. Arro, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to it.
How long have you actually been in real estate?
So I got started in real estate in 2016. So 6 years.
Did you start investing in property first, or did you become a realtor and then start investing in properties?
So I guess my first property that we owned, it was just out of necessity, right? Me and my wife, we needed to buy a property to live in. Not thinking as an investment, but we did rent out the basement.
So you kind of house hacked.
Yes, definitely. So that was back in 2014. But then I got into investing in 2017.
And then 2016 is when you started doing business as a real estate agent.
Yeah, I got my license in 2016. I wanted to get my license because I wanted to get more into investing. And then naturally, it just happened that I connected with somebody that was building their team and they were very investment focused. So I just started working with them as a realtor, working with investors. So it kind of went hand in hand, helped me learn more about investing for myself. So it was kind of just organically happened to be on a team that was doing a lot of investment sales. And that's how I got started.
That's interesting. So basically, like through your work and through getting involved with people who are already in the industry, it kind of gave you a sort of roadmap for you to follow and start your investing journey, right?
That's right.
Did you switch from one thing to another before you became a realtor? Like, what were you doing before that?
Yes. So I went to McMaster. I took commerce at McMaster.
All right.
I was there for a year and I was just like, yeah, this is not for me, right? So I dropped out a year later. And I didn't really have a goal or a vision. What really pushed me into just working was I got married very early. So we got married back in 2012. We wanted to move out, live our life. So I needed to get a job, right? So I just went into any position that I can find. So I started working as a crane operator. So it was pretty intense.
Long hours.
Yeah, like you had the option to do overtime. You didn't necessarily have to, but the jobs that they had, there were a lot of overtime available. We worked on projects like the Ripley's Aquarium, right? We did a lot of the beams for those. Leviathan at Wonderland. We did the beams for that.
Okay.
So it was like heavy duty work, right? So I did that for 3 years. But within that time, I was kind of trying to figure out like what I wanted to do in terms of work. I've always had that mindset of not exchanging time for money, right? I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I got into listening to podcasts early, actually. So this is like 2012, 2013. Podcasts weren't as big of a hit at that time.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate enough to stumble across a couple of really good podcasts that talked about real estate and how to invest in real estate without having any capital, specifically talking about the wholesale strategy.
Yeah.
And that was a lot to do in the States. And then I found something that was local to Canada and then started listening to that. And that's how I kind of changed my mind from just working a regular job to getting into real estate as an investment.
So there was no family influence. You just started thinking about a way out. And podcast is what actually changed your mindset.
Yeah. So podcast definitely did that for me. And till this day, I listen to podcasts every single day. Family, on the other hand, told me to do the opposite, right? They always tell you, don't do it. Terrible time to get into real estate. 2016, they came up with a few changes, mortgage rules and whatnot. So I heard that all the time, like, oh, real estate, this is a bad time for real estate. Don't get into real estate. But I love my family, right? Like they're always trying to look out for you, right? Their natural thought is to try to keep you safe. So they don't want you to get into something where you could potentially fail. So I appreciate that, but at the same time, they don't know what they're talking about at times. And then we actually ended up buying the neighbor's house. So that technically would have been our first investment, right?
Yeah.
And the plan was to renovate it and turn it into a duplex and just keep it. So we would have two properties side by side. At the same time, we're thinking about doing that. We also started renovating our home, which we were living in. To put in a basement apartment so we could rent out both homes at the same time and then we could move to a different home.
So you guys are really starting to hack the property and, start to figure out that multiple income streams.
That's right.
How did you go about it? Were you the kind of guy who got his hands dirty doing some stuff yourself?
At first, yeah.
Yeah.
So me and my buddy, we started doing the demo, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, holy, like this is a lot of work. There's like dust flying everywhere, right? So
yeah.
And I'm like coughing. I didn't have any mask or anything
This
like
is
that.
nothing like the TV shows.
No, definitely not. Because these are, century homes, right? Downtown Hamilton. These properties were built like early 1900s, right? Sometimes even 1800s. And you kind of open them up and you find like pocket doors, the Latin plaster, because I didn't know any of that, right? Like I thought drywall was just drywall. When you look into the Latin plaster, sometimes there's like old newspapers that are hidden in the walls. We found books even.
Wow.
The quality of the work.
That's the insulation they use, right? Newspapers.
Yeah.
At first, that's what we tried to do that. And we're just like, yeah, no, this is not.
So did you demolish the place and then say, okay, yeah, we can't do anymore?
We got through some of the demo. Long story short, there was another opportunity that came up and we just decided to sell it. So I ended up selling both of those properties.
After demolishing?
Yeah. We didn't even finish. Like we didn't do any of
Did
the...
you make money?
Yes. Very little bit. Like it wasn't the making money aspect of it that enticed the sale. It was more so the other opportunity. Always want to hold. Never, we don't want to sell all the time. But if there's another option where you can make more money doing it, and you need that capital, it makes sense to sell at that point.
Sorry, 1 second. And there's no blowback from your wife?
Well, there was a lot. Yeah,
There was a lot.
there was a lot. There was a lot. So there was a lot of, arguments and just talking about like, what are we doing, right? Like why you keep moving things around? Because we actually moved, right? We moved from the place that we were living in.
Yeah.
We rented it out and we decided to go rent somewhere else. So we own 2 homes.
Yeah.
And we're renovating them to rent it out.
Yeah.
And then we went and rented another home in Burlington.
Actually, I think we need to contextualize it because I know if I'm listening to this, some of the things I want to know, like I know that you have a wife, you have 2 kids, a third one on the way.
Mm-hmm.
You're building your family. At the time when you were doing this, did you have kids already?
Yeah. So my daughter was born in 2015.
Okay.
This kind of spurred me into really taking the steps needed to become a realtor and get more into the investing side of things. There's like a paradigm shift that happened to me when my daughter was born. Now that I brought somebody else into this world, my responsibility is just not for myself, right? I have somebody else that I'm responsible for.
I think this guy shares that feeling.
I'm sure
heavily.
I'm
Yeah.
sure most dads do. I hope most dads do because it is a big thing to take on, right? So there was a paradigm shift there where I had to become a little bit more serious. I was 24, I want to say, when she was born. So at that time, I had to really get a little bit more serious, right? Try to figure out what I wanted to do. So that kind of pushed me into getting my license, moving to Hamilton. And then when we were going through this, my wife was actually pregnant with our second child. So there was a lot of changes, a lot of things were happening.
You have a lot of guts.
No, honestly, by the way, I just want to interrupt that for a second because there's some context here that I think really matters. There's 2 types of people, I think, in that type of situation. There is that paradigm shift, which makes you think, okay, it can actually kill the entrepreneurial mentality, saying, I need to just buckle down, get a job, suck it up, and provide for my family.
Mm-hmm.
And then you, on the other hand, it sounds like you made some moves that took some serious risk, right? Because making those moves, especially getting a realtor's license, which is a commission-based line of work, where you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from. There's not a lot of security in anything of what you did.
Right.
And for you to have your wife that actually, from what you said, there was blowback, but it seems like you guys made it through somehow.
Yeah.
The fact that you're able to do that, that's impressive. That's huge. How did you manage to swing that in your relationship aspect?
We've had some moments where we disagreed on what the next step should be. I've known her for a while, right? So we've been together for a really long time. So I was able to really have a conversation with her and talk about future.
Like we have to sacrifice now in order to have what we want later. Make the sacrifices now when we can, right? But it's another thing to actually take that into some kind of application and do it, right? Because it's one thing to say, yeah, we want to struggle. It's another thing to struggle.
A lot of it is trial and error too, right? Like we've done things and it's like, okay, that didn't really work out the best. Let's try to do things differently going forward. I do listen to a lot of motivational videos, and sometimes when there are days where it's like things are not going your way, it gets tough, right? Especially in being in this business. But if you have your, end goal and your end vision and you really feel passionate about it, I think you always find a way to kind of go get through it. Yeah, I've been in that position multiple times and I feel like it hasn't ended, right? I think it's going to keep happening.
Oh, even right now, because you do have a pretty sizable portfolio right now. And I'm pretty sure like your wife has already seen the result from all those sacrifices. You guys still like get into those type of arguments? Or?
So yes and no, right? You guys probably know, right? Once you complete a project, you always want to get into another one, right? And it's almost like as soon as you finish one and you just realize like, oh, okay, like this is good. I could take a break, maybe go on a vacation. The next one pops up out of nowhere, right? And you want to take an action on it. We did a very quick burr earlier last year. We just had a lot of capital sitting around and I was like, okay, like maybe I could take some time off, go on vacations or whatnot. And another really good one popped up and I was just like, I have to buy this place, right?
Yeah.
So
you know what? The hardest part for the investor is never when to actually finish the project. It's like man, I got so much funds, like, or capital sitting in my bank account. I got to do something with
Yeah, you
it.
can't leave it.
Yeah,
right?
like now it really bothers you.
I just been like recycling the capital over and over again. It's getting to a point where I do want to take a break, but I have the feeling that there'll be always something else that'll pop up.
Let's quickly talk about your current portfolio because
Yep.
right now you got yourself into a 22 unit development.
Yep.
On the more on the passive side, but you also have an 8 unit development project that you're working on.
Yeah.
Let's quickly go over that.
It's a commercial to residential conversion. So if you're familiar with the zoning in downtown Hamilton, they have some unique zones where you can do all residential, even if you don't have parking or certain setback requirements.
The TOC.
TOC, definitely. There's downtown zones, D5, D1. There's a couple of those zones where you can do all res. If it's within a certain number of units, I believe it's 12 units. Anything under 12 units, you don't need any parking requirement. So that one specifically, it's really close by. It's right beside 2 condo buildings, and it was previously used for commercial use, but I had the vision for residential, which we confirmed through zoning verifications. There's a lot of due diligence that went into it, but yeah, right now we're in the process of converting it to 8 residential units.
And how did you feel about that project compared to all the other projects that you used to do? Because a smaller project, you have a lot more control, right? A sizable project like that, then you have to go through the city with the permits, and there's a lot of uncertainty because the decision-making process is on other people's hand.
Yes and no. I guess if you're talking about duplexes, that's a completely different scenario. But if you're doing a triplex or even a fourplex, pretty much the same thing, right? Instead of 4 units, you're going to have 8. A lot of the building code requirements are the same. Same thing with fire code and things like that. So, I mean, I have a designer that I, use that knows those codes. So I kind of trust them to kind of go through that process and finish it, get us to the point where we can start the renovations. But in terms of the due diligence, I personally do a lot of the due diligence myself to make sure that whatever it is that I want to do, it will be doable in that area, right? In that specific building. So that's number one. Without that, I'm not looking to get into purchasing that building. That is all on me, right? Once I have it and I know it can be done, it's just all about time and money, right? Like how much time you have to spend to get the permit approved, and also what the capital requirement would be in order to complete the 8 units.
Did you do that with any other partners, or that's all 100% on you?
So that one 100% is on me. I would, looking back on it, made sense if I did use a partner or get into a JV opportunity. It is a lot of capital requirement. The unique thing about it is that there are a lot of private financing options available for stuff like that. Leverage quite a bit. And, the exit strategy would be to refinance through a CMHC program that would give you a higher loan to value, higher amortization for better cash flow.
You've been doing a lot of this stuff on your own, right? Your own capital into your own projects. And you've pretty much just been following the standard burst strategy, right? Just buy a property, renovate it. You do flip some, right?
Well, the intention was never to flip it, but we have sold properties in the past, not because we were trying to flip it, but just the market's changed. Our situation's changed. We had another opportunity available. It made sense to sell it, to reallocate that capital somewhere else. I have worked with JVs in the past, but right now I'm looking to do mostly on my own, especially with commercial projects, just because, like I said, there is a lot of creative financing options available. If it's a bigger deal, like some of the ones that I've been looking at recently, for example, that building, it's like 4 million, right? So for stuff like that, I'm definitely looking for a JV.
Yeah.
I've done JVs before. Right now, I'm just doing it on my own. Any new opportunities that I find that are bigger scale, it would make sense to do joint venture partnerships.
Okay, so a lot of people obviously really talk about the joint venture way to get into real estate and all that. Is there any reason why you decided that may not be the most suitable approach for you? Like, I understand there's a multiple different strategy in place where you can get a little creative with a private finance or even like VTB with the commercial buildings like that. But yeah, we just want to get your idea on why you never really explored that option.
I have done JVs in the past, and it's been really good. And the main reason I was doing joint venture partnerships was because at the time I couldn't get financing myself. As a realtor, right? You're commission based, your income is all over the place. So it was very tough for me to get financing. When we're done the project, it's going to refinance for 900 to $1 million. Very hard for me to qualify for that mortgage. So at that time, I could only do joint venture partnerships. Whereas now I've moved into the commercial space, so commercial lending, and the refinances are typically based on your income qualifications, right? They'll still look at you as a person and, just to make sure there are any issues. But at the same time, it's not generally based on your personal income. It's based on the building's net operating income.
Yeah. You're kind of like the co-signer for the property itself,
That's right.
right?
Yeah. You're giving your, I guess, personal guarantee or whatnot. If the commercial financing can take care of it itself, like if the building can qualify by itself and the deal makes sense, it's just about raising the capital, right? You don't necessarily have to have joint venture partners. You can go ahead and leverage your properties that you currently have. It's a little bit risky, right? But at the same time, instead of you splitting 50% with the JV, you pay 10, 20% interest on the capital that you borrow. You're still saving money, right? 20% as opposed to 50%.
So you use JVs as a way to break into to really grow your real estate portfolio and to do some of the burst strategies that you did on the refinances. And then when you're able to, you exit it out into now more commercial based product where you can operate more independently, which again, you're going to hit a point where you need more JVs in order to scale, right?
Yeah, that's right.
In terms of those JVs, because we talk a lot about how joint ventures are a very good option for people to break into the market right now, especially because, before it was the whole thing where properties are too expensive. Now interest rates are too high. People have carrying cost issues. And even with private money, people find it risky. So joint ventures are a great way for anybody to get in. How do you go about structuring those partnerships? And, do you find any problems with them? How does that work for you?
In the beginning, for me, it was very challenging, right? Because I had to really present to those JV partners, why it's a good option for them to invest with somebody like me, right? Why should they get 50% when they're coming up with most of the capital, if not all of the capital?
Classic.
Classic, right? So at first, I think it's a mental block where you first have to get over that mental block yourself. And if you're having a hard time getting over that, then I think you need to reevaluate what is your value proposition. What is it that you're bringing to the table that should give you 50% of the deal? And a little bit of that is also you might not be approaching the right people. If you're approaching people that also want to be active partners, no matter how good the deal is, they'll never give you 50% of the deal for 100% of their capital. So you need to really look for people that have some sort of a challenge, which would be they have capital, but they don't really know what to do with it or how to make it grow. If you can fill that void in their, solve their problem, I think it would be an easier conversation. And I think it would be easier for somebody to show those potential investors their value proposition. At first, that was very challenging for me, and I was approaching the wrong people. Everybody that I approached, they also wanted to be active partners. So I think, first getting over that hurdle yourself and really understanding and becoming more knowledgeable about the process itself will show to potential JVs that you are the right person for the job. The first question you should ask them is, are you looking to be an active partner or a passive partner? If they just say active partner, obviously that's not going to work. So you should just not even spend your time. Well, don't waste your time on that.
So it's like, you want to be active or passive? Active, click.
Yeah. Like exactly. Right. So you don't want to waste your time with individuals that want to do the same thing that you're doing. You want to be able to solve a problem. I always look at things in a way where, how can I solve for X? You have to become a problem solver. That's all I can really kind of say on that.
Being an investor yourself, how does that help you to become a better investor agent? Because right now your current clientele are all pretty much investors or active investors. Mm-hmm. So how do you actually guide them or coach them through the entire process?
The very first thing for me, and sometimes it could be a bad thing actually, for me at least, is running the numbers, right? Like I'm constantly running numbers. So coming up with different models, so spreadsheets, to really analyze the deal, because it's very hard to paint the picture. Let's say I show a property to a client and I say, yeah, this is a really good deal. Okay, why is it a good deal? Can you show me, right? Like it's very hard to show them that without really writing down the numbers and giving them the ROI, the IRRs, right? Different ways you can calculate the returns.
And that can be a lot of work to be making that on every...
Yeah. So if you can come up with a model or have somebody that has one that you can just keep using. So that's number one, right? Running the numbers. Being an investor myself, when I'm analyzing properties, I can understand why those numbers make sense. And then sometimes I find expenses, right? We always run our expenses too moderately, right? Like it has to be pretty conservative, especially nowadays, right? So being conservative on the numbers, especially on the expense side, also on the refinance side, I'm always coming in lower than what the actual appraisals end up being, because I'd rather be conservative and give you a lower number now, and then you be surprised later on when you get a higher refi, right?
Over deliver.
A lot of my clients tell me that when I'm actually looking for these properties, I don't know if it's a skill or it's something that naturally you have, but this is feedback I get from clients, right? They say that I have an eye for certain properties. I appreciate that, right? Like that feels good when they say that. But I do agree with them because, when you look at a property and you know the area, you know the numbers for the most part, you can kind of get this feeling in your gut that it's like, that's a good deal. And I seem to have that. And most of my clients really appreciate that. Having an eye for good properties, knowing your numbers, knowing the area. I think those are the best ways to really help investors get into the market.
When I first talked to you, you literally know every single listing in Hamilton, right? It's literally because you've seen so many, you analyze pretty much all the deals on the market. And then you can come to a conclusion that, okay, that's a good one,
right?
It's all the hard work behind it. It's not just because the gut feeling.
Every single day, I'm looking at properties that came up on the market. So anytime I see something that kind of looks good, I'm booking a showing to go view it. I see, on your Instagram, you're going through some properties. I'm like, yeah, I've been through that. And I think you guys bought a few that we've been through. This one here, right here, you guys bought. So
yeah, you name them right away. I'm just like, come on, are you stalking us?
Yeah. It's either that or he's really in the game much more than you're leading on.
Yeah. No, I really enjoy real estate, right? As you can probably tell, I'm very passionate about it. So to me, it doesn't feel like work, right? So when I'm going through these, especially in Hamilton, right? These are unique buildings that you're going through, right? Properties that were built in the 1900s. I would definitely hate being a realtor out in like Mississauga or Brampton, right? All the houses are the same. There's nothing fun about that for me. So being curious, being, a little bit passionate about real estate helps, because now when I'm going and doing these showings just by myself, right? A lot of times, like that property over there, when it was first sold, I went through by myself. It was pretty scary because there was like homeless people living there. If you're not passionate about it, you wouldn't go ahead and do that.
That's actually why, some people who come, especially to Hamilton, because Hamilton's like, a very, in my opinion, a unique city, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you get these realtors from Toronto or Mississauga, somewhere else, they come with a Toronto buyer and they think they can wheel and deal the same way that people who are familiar with these properties can. They don't know what they're getting themselves into. They don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
And they kind of come in and they can't really see sometimes the value
Right.
underneath it all, which, if you're looking at this stuff every day,
yeah,
you're going to have much better insights. So
Yeah.
I always find that very interesting when you're right. Hamilton has some properties where it's just like, you have to have a knack and like a good feel for it in order to be good at this.
What makes you go into the 22 unit development with other people? Because you're obviously very active. What makes you decide to take on the passive role?
So that one actually was pretty easy, because I found the deal. The investors were generous enough to give me a passive role in it. So that was pretty easy. I didn't have to, work too much for it other than finding the deal itself. And I was happy with that, right? Like I didn't need to get more than whatever percentage they offered, and I'm completely hands off. And it's 22 units, so
it's more like a opportunity just presented to you.
I find sometimes when you have a little bit of a laid back approach, opportunities will come to you in weird ways. Sometimes you can't be too greedy either, right? You're presented with a decent deal and you don't have to do too much about it. Why would I say no to it?
Sometimes, especially with a joint venture, you don't want to be chasing for that kind of relationship. You want to be attracting that kind of relationship. And with you being passionate about real estate, like even just in our conversation, like you're smiling, you're doing this, and like you could tell like that energy really becomes very influential. And sometimes with building a relationship, that's how you start attracting the right people to your community and start collaborating on some opportunities.
We're active investors, right? And we have infrastructure for our own projects, but we also do take passive roles in other people. And very often when we look at other people that we're going to invest in and with, we look at them and sometimes we can tell that when we're looking at who it is that we want to partner with, it's usually the people that you have faith in. Like whoever it is you took a passive role in that project with, you probably believe in them. You probably feel that, yes,
Absolutely.
these guys are going to be. And it's very insightful into thinking when people invest with you, they must believe in you. It's not always just about the project. I mean, the project has to make sense.
Yep.
But it's often the people behind that project that people have faith in, especially in real estate. It's all about the team, the individual, and their track record in terms of what it is that they've been doing. And you've been doing some great work. So it's no surprise that, you have all these opportunities coming about with you. And people are just like, hey, if we're going to work with you, it's nice if you can work with us. And, everything's very synergistic. I know we've talked a little bit around the whole part of you being humble, because you actually are a very humble guy in your presentation. And even when you're saying, what type of partners are you working with? Do you ever find that it becomes a little bit challenging how when you're presenting things and, your presentation of the project is humble, you're conservative with your numbers, you're not exaggerating, and you're not trying to exaggerate what it is or can and cannot do. And then there's some guys who come in and they're not humble at all. They kind of just come in, it's like, yeah, this is how great it's going to be. We're going to make all this kind of money. These guys very often overpromise and then underdeliver. But sometimes in the beginning, they manage to get those deals. Do you ever find like you're competing with this or?
Yeah, I guess in a way, yes. But at the same time, naturally, that's not my style. I have one way of doing things and there are other people that have their own way of doing things. They might be doing it more effectively. I'm just not willing to change who I am as a person just so I can do more deals, right? That's not in my nature. For people that are doing that, I'm happy for them. And I think, you got to always really hone in on your skills and what you're good at. And if that's what they're good at, 100%, go full throttle with that. But for me, I'm good at just being a person, right? Like I'm just good at just having a, individual conversation with somebody. Been working, right? Like I don't necessarily need to have 150 doors throughout Hamilton, right? I don't necessarily need to have that. And for me, I feel like having kids brought me back down to earth a little bit. It's not about the number of properties or how much capital you have, what kind of cars you drive. It's about the time you spend with people that are really close and important to you. That's what I've been focusing on, really. Sometimes it gets challenging because you're in the business and there's so much going on. It's hard to find that balance. I'm not necessarily looking for the most number of deals, right? I'm not necessarily looking to have 1,000 doors by the end of a certain year, right?
Yeah, more quality over quantity.
That's right. Like I want to be able to spend quality time with my kids, with my family, and go explore the world and things like that. So sometimes less is more, and that's been kind of my mindset. But at the same time, obviously, you got to make money, right? You got to make deals happen to propel yourself a little bit forward.
It sounds like your why is very clear in what you're doing, and that probably really guides your endeavors moving forward.
Investor is essentially the repeat customers in real estate, or the only repeat customers, right? And it sounds like you're already helping or building a community where you get these people into the real estate game for wealth. And then as they're expanding their portfolio, you're there to coach them through and then help them really to restructure their real estate portfolio into something a little bit more advanced.
Yeah.
So right now, it sounds like you have a very, very strong network.
I've been fortunate enough to work with some really great individuals. Like, I guess it was a little bit on me too, because I had to make that phone call, right? Without that phone call, I wouldn't have been able to connect with that person. But the fact that they were willing to take me in, so I'm really appreciative of that. And just working with a lot of great, investors, other realtors. I was on a team, right? So being on a team really propelled my understanding and knowledge about the real estate markets, different strategies. So, I really appreciate being around people that know a lot of things that I personally don't know, and just being able to observe and learn. I find sometimes a lot of people they don't want to learn as much as they should. I'm in learning mode constantly, right? Just always trying to figure out what to do next, how to become a little bit more knowledgeable. Credit all that to the individuals that helped me along the way, and just understanding that you always need to learn and you don't know everything, right? A lot of times we like to think we know everything, but we really don't.
The more we learn, the more we know that we don't know everything.
Exactly.
It really sounds like as your client base grows, you're growing along with them. So it's not like they leave you behind. You make sure to you're anticipating their growth, it sounds like. And it also sounds like you're niching down, right? You're really niching down. This is the next stage, and this is where I have to become an expert. That's why, you're learning about, zoning, bylaw, what it is that your investors will want, what you will want, right? Because as an investor agent, that's one of the things I feel that a lot of agents often lack, knowing what it is real estate investors are looking for. And that's because usually they are absent of doing any investments of their own. So when you're talking to other investors, it's like, this guy really gets me.
Yeah, I guess
really understand.
There's two components of that, right? There's the numbers side of things. So you could be really analytical and you could understand the numbers. And then there's the actual, going out and doing it and hiring a contractor and going through the different trades. So there's two aspects of it, right? So you kind of want to have a little bit of both. If you're an investor and you're working with an agent, that agent should have some sort of investments.
Ideally.
Yeah. Ideally.
It sounds like your journey has had a lot of growth, a lot of success, a lot of lessons. What would you say is one of the biggest challenges that you have faced in your journey so far?
I would say balance is definitely a big one for me, just because being in any industry where you're somewhat self-employed, right? You're kind of like an entrepreneur. It's very difficult to turn it off, right? You start your day, you get phone calls first thing in the morning, and then you come home, you get phone calls through the night, right? Evening, you're getting phone calls. The biggest challenge for me would be when to really turn it off, because you're not a 9 to 5er. Everybody thinks you're open at all times.
Mm.
So you want to set those expectations from the get-go. And once you set those expectations, you want to stick to them, right? I know there's situations where, let's say it's an offer presentation and they're doing it at 9 p.m. I don't know why agents do offer presentation at 9 p.m. If that's the case and that has to be done, understandable. But there should be some guidelines as to how much you're working. If you're single and you don't have kids, go at it, right? Like, work as much as you can. Having 2 kids and third on the way, I really struggle with that, when to really turn it off and just focus more on the family and just personal life.
I always wondered about that. Why some realtors will send you they're revocable by like midnight, right? And it's like, why, right? And then at 11:59 you get an email. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, no, but the work-life balance thing is a very interesting topic of conversation for a lot of people who are in real estate, who are making that hustle and trying to make things happen. And people sometimes romanticize the idea of working constantly, continuously. And that's why you have sayings like, oh, money doesn't sleep, right? So you shouldn't either.
Right.
And it's like, it's not exactly true. And if you see some of the people who are particularly successful, they put significant effort into balancing out what it is they do and how they lead their lives. Because how good are you possibly going to be in business at connecting with others when you are not capable of being a real person, a real human being, like having hobbies, having family, being able to resonate with people over common things? Because people don't always work with people they think are the greatest at their business. People often work with people they like and are good at their business.
Right.
So you have to connect on some level. So the work-life balance thing, I think, is definitely really important. Do you feel like you're balanced today?
No, I do not. I enjoy real estate because I'm passionate about real estate. Oftentimes, I'm not thinking that I'm working, right? Because I'm like, oh, I'm not really working right now because it doesn't feel like work. But to my wife, to my kids, to them, I'm working, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not there with them. I don't think it's something that I'm going to really get a grasp on quite yet, but that's my goal. I really want to get to a point where I can really focus more on family and personal life, right? I have goals that I want to accomplish on my, personal lifestyle, right? Working out and being active. I've always been into sports since I was younger, but I've never played sports like professionally or, just as a hobby. So I want to get back into that. Right? I recently tweaked my ankle and I was like hurt, and I was like thinking like, what happened? Like, how did I get hurt?
When did I get old?
Yeah, when did I get old? Right? If you don't physically stay active, your body just kind of like, even, I'm not gaining a lot of weight or anything like that, but I know that I'm getting older, right? So I really want to focus a little bit more on my personal side as well. So I hope that happens soon, but that's been my biggest challenge, right? There's obviously challenges with the market and certain clients and whatnot, but those things you can overcome. But finding that balance has been difficult.
Is it okay if I share with you about like how I try to balance myself?
Sure, yeah.
Usually I look at 6 areas: personal development, personal finance, business development, family, health, and your spiritual. Usually I try to like look at these 6 different areas and try to have a bit of measurable goal every single year, and then try to turn that into a bit of a habit, right? And if I realize that I'm a little off balance or I'm not on track with those numbers, it tells me that there are a few things that I'm trying to prioritize that I probably shouldn't prioritize in the very beginning. So I usually try to do a bit of a reflection on that, and that really helps me bring it back to where I feel like it should be balanced. I think it's really important that a lot of people talk about that, because if it's just business all the time, eventually you're going to burn out. Eventually you're going to become the limitation of your own, because there's no delegation.
The way you said, first acknowledging that there are some challenges, that's number one, because I feel like sometimes you can get into where like life's great, there's no problems here, right? So you need to first acknowledge that there's a problem, and then put together a proper game plan to how to solve that problem.
Yep.
And for me, that's been the challenge, where I haven't really been able to put something together where, I can really focus more balance, right? Because new deals come up and you're like, okay, you're excited about that new deal, and now you take on another, project. So I really want to be able to say no to some deals for sure.
It almost feels like an illness sometimes. Like, you can't just, why do I keep saying yes to this? I can see how that would be largely problematic. So what are some of your next steps? What is Arro looking to do?
So for me next, I really want to get into more of commercial real estate, right? That's been, something I've been intrigued about since I first got started, and not necessarily commercial use. It could be even industrial storage units, but definitely bigger projects. And also just getting more cash flow, right? Given the current market situation, I think we all kind of realize the importance of cash flow, positive cash flow. Really looking to get into scenarios where you can still do the BRRRR strategy, because I think it's great, where you can recycle your capital over and over again. But with doing that with bigger properties, so commercial financing, just really trying to understand different models of the same BRRRR strategy and how we can implement that within Hamilton, because I don't think many people are doing that right now.
Yeah.
Some are, but not as many. And I definitely want to be one of the first ones doing it as opposed to the last ones.
Get into it before it gets too hot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. And what does that look like for you? Like, what is it that you need in order to see that? Like, do you feel like you need partnerships? Do you feel like you're looking for people to lead and you partner with? Or what is it that you are looking for in order to make those things happen?
Having capital is a big aspect of it, right? So, growing that part of my business would be ideal, where if I can raise more capital and kind of like what you said, have the capital available. So anytime there's a good deal around, you can take action right away. Sometimes we're, finding the deal first and then looking for capital, which works. Puts a little bit.
It's almost one of the sure ways to do it, right?
Right. Puts a little bit of pressure on you. Whereas having the capital first, so, having investors that want to get into that commercial space and really want to learn more about it, that's who I'm really kind of looking to connect with so that I can help them understand a different aspect. And then together we can, collaborate and get into bigger partnerships.
So if anybody who's watching wants to get in touch with you for something like this, whether they have a deal or they're looking to park some money somewhere and they've seen what you're doing, they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? Instagram, email? How's the best way?
Yeah, I would say reach out via Instagram.
Mhm.
It seems to be the new platform for everything now, right? So yeah, send a message, DM, or even a comment through my Instagram handle.
We'll make sure to throw your Instagram handle somewhere here in the description or on the screen somewhere. So if you want to get in touch with Arro, make sure to reach out with him there because he's got tons of experience and he has a lot of great information to share. So Arro, we really enjoyed having you on the show. Thank you very much for coming.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.